time. We're going to get started. So welcome to Recipe for Success, a homebuyer's virtual workshop this time around. My name is Catherine Donahue, and I'm here with Lexi Koutsos. We're going to be running tonight's class. I'll let Lexi introduce herself. I'll introduce myself. We'll give you a rundown of what you can expect for the next hour, hour and a half, and then we'll dive right in. So Lexi, over to you.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. I'm Lexi, as Catherine mentioned. I am a loan officer with Cross Country Mortgage. I've been in the business about 10 years and have been doing this side of things for about 6, but I've been in the business around it for my whole life. My parents have been doing this for about 40 years. And, you know, I'm probably the only kid I knew who grew up going to open houses on the weekends for fun. So a little fun fact about me. I'm so excited about tonight. I love teaching and educating people about this side of things. I have a soft spot in my heart for first-time home buyers, much like Catherine. So this is great. I'm here for you guys. I can't wait to go over all of this information with you.
Excellent. Thank you, Lexi. And then, like I mentioned, my name is Catherine Donahue. I've been a member of the Junior League here in Boston for the past 2 years. I serve as chair of the Social Events Committee, which sits on the Membership Council. I also happen to be a licensed realtor. I'm one of the founding agents of Compass's Green Group. Grew up right outside of the city in Weston, Massachusetts. I currently live in Boston's Back Bay and have been there for the past several years. So I do most of my work in Boston, the surrounding markets, as well as the Metro West area. I do work with both buyers and sellers, but having come from a past career in education, I taught high school world history prior to becoming a real estate agent. I love working with and educating first-time home buyers like yourselves, as Lexi mentioned. So that's a little bit about us. What I'd like to do next is give a little bit of an overview of what you can expect this evening. So for those of you who attended our workshop last year, we walked league members through each step on the road to home ownership, from deciding you want to buy a house to then closing on that home. This year, we've approached things a little differently. We're focusing on that preparation stage of the home buying process. We're going to be talking this evening about the actions you can take now, whether you are a few months or a few years away from purchasing your first home. And the home buying process, while very exciting, can often feel confusing and overwhelming. So our hope is that by the end of tonight's session, you will leave with a very personalized and actionable plan that will help you, when the time is right for you, be really confident about starting the home buying process. And what we've done since this workshop was first designed to be held at the end of last month, we did an in-person workshop at my office on Newbury Street, the Compass office. We had food, drink, and a lot of wonderful league members come out and attend that workshop. Since it was originally intended to be in person, it was very based within these printed workbooks that we had for attendees. And that's why that drive link that we've shared in the chat is going to be very important tonight. A lot of the programming this evening is based around some of the handouts, worksheets, and activities that are comprised within that drive. So please make sure you have either printed copies or the virtual or digital copies in front of you, because much of what we're going to be walking through is only going to make sense if those resources are on hand. Anything you want to say before we jump in, Lexi? Anything we need from the chat, Shannon, before we get started?
I think we're ready.
I think we're all set.
Excellent. I'm going to see if I can work my slideshow at the same time as I can talk, which who knows? Okay, so we want to start with our why. Why do Lexi and I every year host a home buyer seminar for the women of the Junior League? The real reason is because Lexi and I feel it's very important to empower females, especially in the home buying process. I think very traditionally, we think of home buying as something that typically comes after marriage. It's something you do with a spouse, perhaps before starting a family. And tonight, I hope that we kind of can shift our lens or our way of thinking about home buying and really empower this group of women tonight to challenge those tropes and stereotypes to think of themselves as future homeowners in their own right, should that be the path that they choose. I'll nerd out a little bit and share a few statistics that single home ownership currently is at record levels. Singles made up about a quarter of home sales in 2019. 17% of that quarter were single female buyers, with single males only making up about 9%. This has never happened before in human history. There isn't a single metro amongst the 50 largest in the United States where single men own more homes than single women. In fact, Boston has the largest gap. It's just under 6% in home ownership rates between single women, owning about 66,000 more homes than single men in the Boston area. I think, there's a number of reasons why this is, and this is not, of course, a sociology course, but women being more career focused now than in previous generations are making an investment in themselves and in their future, rather than waiting on marriage or a man to kind of provide that life that they want. Anecdotally, Lexi and I work primarily, I would say, with female home buyers, second to like young couples and families. So I say that because I don't want anyone here tonight thinking like the dream of homeownership isn't attainable for them. It's something that no matter what situation you're in, whether it's a traditional situation or not, it's something that you can absolutely realize. And with that, I'd like to get us started on how we can realize that dream. What I'm going to do is stop sharing my screen because I think my slides don't necessarily cover so much content, and it might be better if you could see me on the full screen so that you know what we're doing as we walk through our workbook together. So what I'll tackle first, and then I'll let Lexi tackle the financial side of things, is the advantages and disadvantages of home ownership compared to renting. So we're going to first ask the question, is home ownership right for you at this time? And that's a question that you can ask yourself every 6 months, every year, every couple of years, and the answer may change over time. Next, we're going to dive into, okay, so you've decided home ownership is right for you. What are the expenses and responsibilities of home ownership so that before you even embark on the process, you know what you're getting yourself into. And then lastly, which is my favorite part, we're going to begin to build your dream home by developing your wants and needs list so that when you are ready to purchase a home, whether that's months or years from now, you have a very tangible document that you can go to a realtor and say, this is what I'm looking for. And we're going to be doing all of that in this buyer's workbook. So you should be able to find a document that looks like this in your Google Drive. I believe it's called the JLB Buyer's Workbook. And go ahead and pull that up because that's the document that I'll be walking us through during the first half of class. Should you want to print this out, you can of course put your name on the front cover. But the point of this workbook is as you prepare for home ownership, you can revisit it at any time. It's timeless in that way. And there's a few reference sheets and a few activities inside, and we'll walk through them together. So the first are just a few reference sheets. You'll notice on page number, I guess it's 2 after your front cover, it's labeled Steps to Home Buying. And this is the steps that go through, finding and meeting your agent all the way through closing on your home. And that's really what our content last year covered, every single step on the road to home ownership. So we won't dive into detail too much on this evening because of course our content has shifted a little bit, but should anyone have questions about the steps of home ownership during our Q&A at the end, we are more than happy to dive into those topics at that time. But we wanted to include this just as a resource and a reference so that when you're ready to embark on your home ownership journey, you kind of have an outline of what that journey looks like. On the next page are a few key terms, some real estate jargon that you may hear thrown around by either your lender, your real estate agent. So just some definitions of terms so that you can speak the language as well. And then the real meat of our content to kick off is this list of advantages and disadvantages of home ownership. And go ahead and pull that up, give it a read over. And as you're scanning through some of the pros and cons of home ownership, I'll give some context to this topic. So when people are deciding upon whether or not to buy a home, rising rents are usually the biggest trigger prompting people to buy a home for the first time, at least for people ages 18 through 34. As of last October, which is October 2021, Boston was the third most expensive city for renters after New York City and San Francisco. And at the end of January, Boston rents were at an all-time high, up 9% before pre-pandemic levels. So buying a home becomes a really good alternative for people who want to stabilize their housing costs. Not to mention the fact that homeowners are 40 times more wealthy than renters, more likely to keep their jobs, more likely to profit from the stock market, have enough money in savings to take advantage of low interest rates, et cetera. So lots of benefits come from homeownership. So it becomes this thing that we kind of put on a pedestal as this like attainable goal, which is awesome. However, buying a home may not be right for everyone at every point in their life. It is probably the largest financial investment a household will make or an individual will make. So you want to make sure it's an investment that's right for you, and that may change over time. So hence, pros and cons of home ownership. And our theme for tonight is personalization, creating this really personalized action plan for you, deciding what type of home is right for you and when that journey is right for you. So at some point, and what I'll say is when this was developed for our in-person workshop, we had drinks and snacks, and there was chit-chatting and conversation. So we had people fill out this renting versus owning workshop, right then and there, as they were able to eat, munch, and drink. In the interest of time and to avoid some Zoom awkwardness this evening, we won't have you fill out the worksheets in front of us in silence on our Zoom call. So we're just going to outline kind of the purpose of the worksheets. And then when you come back to this, either later this evening, or when you start to seriously think about home ownership, or just assess for yourself, how far am I away from home ownership? These are things that could be, and we think are very helpful. So this activity, renting versus owning, asks you to decide whether each statement is a pro or a con for you. And next to the statement, you would put a plus or a minus, denoting a pro or a con. And then at the end, you would add up all of the pluses for renting, all of the minuses for renting, as well as all of the pluses for owning and all of the minuses for owning. And this may change for you over time. You filling out this worksheet at 24 may look very different than you filling out this worksheet at 34. And this is kind of a good litmus test as to whether or not you're ready to take that step towards home ownership. Shannon, I want to pause. Are there any questions in the chat before we move on to the responsibilities and expenses of home ownership?
Nothing yet.
Excellent. So the first step, obviously, is deciding if home ownership is right at this time for you. And then the next would be, once you have made that decision, understanding what home ownership entails. So this next sheet, Home Hunting Hacks, go ahead and pull that up, and I'll lend some context as to what this actually is. So while buying a house may present more stable housing costs, the expenses involved in being a homeowner are very different than those of being a renter. As a homeowner, you take on certain responsibilities that you just simply don't have while renting an apartment. Who pays the water and electric bills? Who pays the property taxes? Who fixes all of the appliances? Make sure all of the systems, heating, water, electrical are in good working order every year? Who repairs a failed septic system? Who's responsible for painting the house? Who fixes the storm windows and doors? The answer to all of these questions is the homeowner. And that, at the end of the day, might be you. So you want to make sure you understand what those responsibilities are. And when purchasing a home, what quality is this home in, such that I'm now responsible for taking care of it. So you should anticipate the expenses involved in home ownership before you make the commitment to buying the house. Developing a budget prior to purchasing your home can definitely help you afford to not only pay for the house, but also pay for the repairs and maintenance it may need. And Lexi will, of course, talk more about the financials of budgeting, but I can really walk you through asking the right questions when you're touring homes ahead of time so that you understand how much not only work is entailed in maintaining this specific home, but also what the cost may be. So I usually tell my clients to anticipate between 3 to 5% of the home's purchase price to be able to put that aside and put towards annual maintenance and upkeep of the home every year. And this home hunting hacks reference page is a reference for you during that home hunting process so that you know the types of questions to ask, so you understand the quality and status of the home you're about to buy. It lists most of the items you may not know that you should be asking about during the home tour process. And these are mostly the unsexy elements of the home, the items that live below the surface and that you may not be aware of just by looking at the home. But typically, these are the items that are going to be the ones that end up costing you a lot more in the long run. So it's one thing to go to an open house and love the style of the finishes and the floor plan and the layout and the color of the walls. That's all important stuff, making sure you feel good in the home. But this is all like the not fun stuff that you also really need to be asking about so you understand the responsibilities of maintenance and upkeep involved over the long run. So these are things like roof, your systems, water heater, pest or termite history. You're buying a condominium. Are there any special assessments that the condo association has done recently? Has the seller made any improvements to the home since they took ownership? Is there a history of mold? Is the home on a sewer system or a septic system? What are the property taxes? What do the utility costs on a monthly basis? Are there any easements or rights of way on the property? What are the zoning restrictions for the property? Has there been a history of flooding or water damage? What is excluded from the home purchase? What items will be removed prior to the closing? What items are included in the home purchase? Is furniture included? Does the condominium association have any restrictions on pets? What additional fees might be incurred monthly, including, a condo application fee, an HOA fee, capital contribution fees? If there's a pool, is it heated? When was the pool last finished? Is there a seller's disclosure form attached to the listing that will disclose all of this information for you? All of these things are items that your realtor will absolutely help guide you through while touring each of the homes that you go see. But it's nice to have this list in your hands as well, so you just make sure that you're not missing anything when you go to look at a property of interest. Now, none of that means anything, if you find out the age of the roof or the age of the water heater, if you don't know the lifespan of a roof or a water heater. So that's where this next page in your workbook, how long will they last? It gives you a cheat sheet and a helpful reference and just a general guide for the typical ages of some of your major appliances and systems, including your heating and cooling systems, plumbing systems, appliances, and then different types of roofs. So that when you see a listing that has a slate roof, you're in pretty good shape. Those things can last forever. Or if you see a listing that says, the hot water heater is about 10 years old, you're thinking, oh yeah, okay, so if I purchase this house, I need to budget for a new hot water heater within the next 2 to 3 years. So just a helpful reference to have on hand, whenever you choose to go out looking for homes. Shannon, before we move on, any questions so far?
Nope, we're all set.
Excellent. So we've covered renting versus buying, advantages and disadvantages to ownership. Once you've made that ownership decision, what are the expenses and responsibilities involved, and how can you be a really smart buyer by asking the right questions ahead of time before you get in over your head with a home purchase that needs a lot more work than you anticipated? The last piece that I'm going to cover before we hand things over to Lexi is the most fun part, I think. And it's when you get to decide all of the, you get to design kind of what your dream home looks like. What house is the best house for you? And much of the preparation that you can be doing now, whether you're months or years away from purchasing, is thinking about the kind of home that's going to meet your and your family's needs, and begin to develop a list of expectations that you have for this new home. And prioritization here will be the name of the game. No one house will have everything you seek, but the home you ultimately purchase should meet as many expectations as possible. That's our goal. But we need to know what those expectations are. So there's 3 steps here. First, you'll need to decide who is involved in your home search. Are you looking by yourself and funding this completely, with your own money? Do you have a partner involved that's going to help purchase this home with you and wants a say in what type of a home that will be? Are parents, relatives, or friends helping you out financially and ultimately want a say in this purchase? You need to know who's going to be involved and whose opinions that you need to be aware of. Next, you need to look at all of the areas of your life and your lifestyle and how you live to determine how your home should accommodate them. Examples of questions to consider might be, how many bedrooms are required, how many bathrooms? That's a pretty basic one. But do you need a safe play area for children? How much parking will you need, if any? Do you need to accommodate an elderly relative unable to negotiate strain? So you're really looking for a bedroom, at least one on a first floor. Really think about all of the areas in your life and lifestyle and how your home should accommodate them. And then that's going to lead to you developing what we call your needs and wants list. Your needs are your must-haves, your non-negotiables, your deal breakers. At a minimum, this typically includes whether you're looking for a single family or a condo, the neighborhoods or towns that you're looking in, bed count, bath count, square footage, and then a few specific elements like, oh, we really need a yard because we have a large dog, or we need parking because we have a car, or we need 3 bedrooms because it's, us and our 2 kids. Next are your wants, and these are your nice to haves or your wishes, but should your, home that you find have everything on your needs list and not have one of your wants, it wouldn't be a deal breaker at the end of the day. They would be great to have in your home, but you would be okay doing without them. So for example, perhaps a finished basement would be really nice to have, but isn't going to ultimately break your decision to move forward with the home should it meet all of your needs criteria. And then lastly, of course, is your don't care list, but that becomes neither here nor there. So from your needs and wants list, after you've looked at your lifestyle and you determine what is needed and what is just nice to have, I advise that my clients expect that they get about 80% of that list. Anything beyond that, of course, we aim for, but it's a bonus. So aim for about 80%. And that creates some nice realistic expectation setting. Lastly, after you've listed who's involved in your purchase, you've looked at your lifestyle, you've written out that list of needs and wants, you need to make this come full circle. You need to then take that list of needs and wants, go back to everyone you listed as being involved in this purchase and make sure everyone is on the same page. It's very awkward when we sit down with a couple and, one partner is looking for a condo in the city and the other partner is like, well, I want a single family home in the suburbs. They have not had that conversation about managing their expectations. So always best to be on the same page as you come into your purchase. I've also had situations where sometimes if a parent is helping out with a first-time home buyer, the first-time buyer goes out, finds a place that they like, gets an offer accepted, et cetera, everything as well. But the parent was never consulted. And then sometimes, issues can arise during the transaction because the parent really isn't on board with the purchase that's moving forward. So communication is just the name of the game, as with any good relationship. It just makes things go smoother and a lot less stressful when you start to pull in your real estate partners. And the thing that we've included to help you do all of this is, I think it's the next 3 pages of your workbook. It's your buyer questionnaire. So it's page 1, page 2, and then lastly, my dream home wish list on page 3. And these ask all the same questions. I pulled this same questionnaire from the one that I send my buyer clients. The minute someone reaches out to me and says, I want to buy a home with you, I send them a digital version of this questionnaire so that they're thinking about all of the things that they need to think about before we actually go out and look for homes. So it asks questions about, your timeline, when your lease expires, if you're currently renting, how many bedrooms, how many baths, what condition of the home are you looking for, new construction versus, I don't mind putting a little TLC into it. Any styles of home really draw you. Access to public transportation, is that important to you? All of these things are things that we should be thinking about. Even if you're not ready to purchase now, they're things you can be thinking about for down the line. And then the activity on the My Dream Home wish list page asks you to go through some of the most common features within a home, things like central AC, a dining room, an exercise room, mud rooms, open floor plan, pet friendly, does it need to have a pool? And you mark them with a heart if it's a need, a check if it's a want, and an X if you don't care about it. And this will help you converse with your realtor and your team when the time comes to let them know what's really important to you, what's a deal breaker, and then what's just nice to have. Any questions currently, Shannon?
Nope, nothing in the chat.
Awesome. Thank you so much. After you've done all of that, no matter kind of where you are in your timeline, Lexi and I wanted to provide some guide on what might come next, because we all may be at really different stages in this process. So that's this page. It's called Closing Time because you know me, I have a love for puns. And it's your next steps dependent on how far out you are from a home purchase. So if you're more than 1 year out from purchasing your home, stay here, continue to revise and develop your wants and needs list, look at your lifestyle and how it perhaps changes over the next few months or the next few years, and then adjust your wants and needs list accordingly. Maybe a yard didn't matter to you when you first filled this out, but then, you know, in the next 2 years, you get a dog. And by the time you're ready to purchase a home, now a yard is very important. So just continue to revise and educate yourself about the home buying process. Now, for those who are about a year away from purchasing their next home, I would say, do all of that, you know, revise your needs and wants list, but also get in touch with a realtor and a real estate agent. And I'm sure Lexi would say a loan officer as well, of course, but I'm speaking from the realtor's point of view. Get in touch with a buyer's agent, a real estate agent who works with buyers. And at this stage, your agent can set up a preliminary search for you using the criteria that, you know, you think you'd want in a home in your desired areas. And it will help to give you an idea as you watch properties come on the market and sell over the next year. It'll give you a sense of property value, how far your dollar will go in those locations and what you're actually getting out of a home within your budget. And is your wants and needs list realistic for those areas and your budget? So by the time you're ready to begin your search in about a year, you'll be really knowledgeable about the local market and be able to adjust your expectations accordingly. And then lastly, if you're less than a year out from purchasing your home, you'll absolutely want to get in touch with a real estate agent. I would say sit down with them. It's time to have the conversation that reviews the steps of the home buying process. Get in touch with a mortgage lender for that pre-approval, which Lexi will speak about in a moment. Your realtor will set you up with a search that pulls all of the homes on the market that meet your needs and wants list. And then from there, you'll likely go out and start touring homes in the effort to make an offer. When I say buyer's agent, I guess what I say, all of these steps at some point involve contacting a real estate agent. And although this is kind of beyond the scope of our workshop this evening, I did want to include a reference just because I have it and I give it to clients all the time of, you know, okay, so you said next step is to contact a real estate agent. What am I looking for in a real estate agent? So this next page called Buyer's Agent Benefits and Services walks through what you should be able to expect from a buyer's agent. Loyalty, to you, representing your interests, not the interest of the sellers, confidentiality, and a number of other things that your buyer's agent will do on your behalf throughout the transaction. We spoke about this a little bit more last year, kind of differentiating what a buyer's agent is versus a seller's agent. And we're happy to answer more questions within that regard during the Q&A portion of this evening. But it's important to know what you can expect out of your real estate agent. And this is the document I give to potential clients of mine, just so that they know what they can expect of me as their agent. If you feel like we might be a good fit to work together at some point in time, I wanted to put a little bit more information about me and my bio and where you can find me, so that if you feel like you or contacts that you may have, friends or family who are looking to buy, might be a good fit, then you can learn a little bit about me and what I'm all about. Also in here, as I'm flipping through, wanted to give examples of some of the sales that I've done working with buyers who are first-time buyers. over the last year. You notice a range of price points, a range of locations, condos, single families. So, you know, it's all attainable. They're all different in their own way. The thing that ties them together, they were all first-time home buyers. Sometimes I think that that's a little helpful for inspiration. And then lastly, because I know that the Junior League, although we're all in Boston right now, sometimes we can be a little transient in that some of us may be moving to other cities and states eventually for work or to settle down, move closer back to family, et cetera. I don't want this workshop to go, my words are escaping me, but it to all be for naught. You know a real estate agent now, and should you ever need to move and look to buy in another state and not know where to start with contacting a real estate agent there, real estate agents have a vast network, and I've included this map of all of the states and cities where Compass is located, and I know agents even beyond those states. So specifically within the Junior League, I have so many examples of young women who have moved to Dallas, to DC, et cetera, and they'll call me up and they're like, I know you don't work there, but can you put me in touch with an agent who does? And I am more than happy to call and refer you to a local buyer's agent that I vet for you, put you in touch ahead of time so that you can hit the ground running once you get there. And that has worked out really well in the past, especially for women of the league, that if you leave the state of Massachusetts, don't feel like you're starting from scratch somewhere else. I'm happy to make a contact and put you in touch with an agent in those locations as well. And gosh, I guess that's it for me. It goes a lot faster when we're not snacking and drinking at the same time. I will say any other questions for me can be done during the Q&A, although I'll perhaps pause right now before I pass things over to Lexi to ask Shannon if there's any relevant questions that I could answer at this time.
I don't see any in the chat. If anyone has any, feel free to post them. And if not, we'll do like the larger Q&A at the end as planned.
Wonderful. Thank you. Lex, I'm going to get your slides up.
Awesome. Thank you. And great job, Catherine. Always so informative. Your booklet is amazing. Everybody who's on the call definitely flip through, definitely use that as a resource. She's worked really hard, put together amazing information. So, you know, definitely use it as a resource in your journey. That being said, Catherine spoke a lot about, gave me a really great layup on talking about you know, different type of expenses you should keep in mind, you know, what you're looking for in terms of your dream home. And where I come in is, I want to talk to you about how we're going to make that happen. So first thing we got to do is think like a lender. I want to give you a little bit of insight onto what we look at, how we arrive at the numbers we arrive at when we sit down and speak to you, different things that you should be mindful of, no matter what part of the journey you're on. If you're looking, as Catherine mentioned, a couple of years out, or if you are looking, you know, possibly within the next few months or even now, these are things to definitely keep in mind. So first things first, credit. I'm sure everybody knows all about credit and how that's very, very important to, you know, be mindful of as you're going through the process. We all know we need it, but how does it come into play? Your credit score and your credit history, not only do they determine your rate, you know, the higher your credit, the better your rate generally. It also, your credit history depends on how strict the qualifications are when we're actually choosing a loan product for you. So you definitely want to be mindful of that. If you're looking a little bit far out, you definitely want to keep an eye on it now, see if there's anything you can do to boost it. We'll get into a little bit more detail on this in the upcoming slides, but that's first and foremost the thing that I get the most questions on for sure. Next thing is the monthly survival number, otherwise known here as the MSN. This is what a good lender will look at when they're looking at your affordability, what you're going to be comfortable paying. This number basically refers to the minimum monthly amount that you need to pay your bills. And we're going to be calculating this in the upcoming activity. If you haven't already, please take a look at your Google Drive. We're going to be looking at this worksheet, your monthly survival number. Definitely pull that out and start taking a look now, filling it out if you can, especially because we're not going to take some time. You just want to get that going. Next thing we want to keep in mind when you're looking for a home and you're thinking about what you need to do financially is cash. That's the big one. You want to make sure you have enough saved, not only for your down payment, but also for your closing costs. And generally, I prefer to recommend you have a little bit left over after down payment and closing costs to have for a reserve. Life happens. You can move in, everything could look perfect and be perfect, but God forbid, you need to do a fix, or you move in and you want to update something or upgrade something, or something you want to make a little bit more you definitely want to have that money as a cushion for sure. For first-time home buyers, there are different loan programs available. For a down payment amount, you can go as little as no money down. And in some cases, you can do 3% down, depending on what your situation is. But regardless, you want to make sure you have a little bit. I would say try to have 3% down if you're a first-time home buyer. So I would definitely also have about, in terms of closing costs, keep in mind the 2% rule. You want to have about 2% of the purchase price set aside for closing costs, which include all the fees from the lender, the attorney, the appraisal, the escrows, and the prepaids. Typically, I would say that based on Boston prices, you want to have about $7,000 to $9,000, very, very rough number, just set aside for those costs. Some people are shocked at how much they are. Definitely want to make sure you're prepared before you put an offer in, that that's what you should be prepared to have. And going back to the monthly survival number, you want to have a few months of that set aside on top of all that. If it's not possible with your timeline, if you're thinking of moving very quickly, I would say a comfortable cushion to have is about $2,000 to $3,000 after everything is all said and done. Next, income, other big one. Lenders are going to look at what type of income you make. So are you salary, hourly? Do you get bonuses? Do you have a history of getting bonuses? The idea is pretty much to show a consistent 2-year history of whatever type of income that you make, especially if it's variable, such as hourly or commission. If your salary is consistent, full-time, likely to continue, you may be able to get around that 2-year rule. In certain cases, if you recently graduated and got your first job and you're looking to buy a home pretty soon, for instance, that's one example of when you could get around the 2-year rule. But a good rule of thumb is expect your lender to look at an average of the last 2 years of your income, especially if you have anything that's a little bit unusual. They'll definitely go with the most conservative option. Last is the debt to income ratio, otherwise known as DTI. That's how the lender uses the cash and the income, the income and your debts to determine your max qualification for a purchase. So we'll go into that in a little bit more detail in the upcoming slides as well. Next slide, please. Catherine, if you don't mind, thank you. So credit. So I probably get the most questions of anything on credit as a lender. It's pretty clear why. It's because often the credit bureaus are not fully transparent about what algorithms they use to determine your credit score, which is fine. We have a pretty good idea of how it's broken down, how it's calculated. This is pretty accurate. As you already probably know, the higher your score, the better. Typically, the higher your score, the better the interest rates are, the less rigid loan guidelines are. What we do when we look at your credit, in preparation for pre-approving you, is we do a hard pull. We take your 3 scores from Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian. We take the median of those 3 scores, and that is what we use as your qualifying score. So the best rates come with scores of 680 or higher. And what my job is as a lender is to work with you to get your score as high as possible. So, the earlier you speak to me or any other good lender, the better. That gives us plenty of time to work with you to get your score up as high as possible and get you the best rate when the time is right. However, having a low score does not mean that you won't qualify. So the lowest score we'll work with is a 580 with FHA programs and certain compensating factors. So remember, nothing is set in stone. A good loan officer will sit with you, work with you on strategies and on improving your score, and if necessary, do whatever they can to help you. So breaking down what a credit consists of, biggest thing is, as you can see, payment history. That's the heaviest factor. Creditors want to make sure that you're paying your bills on time, of course. So keep in mind, they work in increments of 30 days. So if you're 30 days late on a payment, that's a hit. If you're 60 days late, it's a little bit of a bigger hit. 90 days, even more of a hit than before. So the great news about that, though, or the great news in general, is that we typically look at the most recent 3 to 6 month payment history. So if about a year or so ago you ran into some trouble and you weren't able to pay everything on time, that's perfectly okay. Your more recent history is what really matters. So, depending on when you're planning on looking, if you've been doing good, don't worry, you should be fine. Just keep on doing what you're doing and you'll be great. We've definitely seen scores bounce significantly in as little as a year. So just keep on looking. Make sure you're always aware of what's due and when it's due, and you should be golden. Second biggest thing is the balances that you're carrying to the limits of the credit cards. So you want to be sure that you're keeping all your balances to about 30% of the limit. So for example, if you have a credit card with a limit of $10,000, you want to keep the balance on that card to $3,000 or less at all times. The lower you keep that ratio, the better. The better your score tends to be. For multiple reasons, you want to make sure, you probably want to keep that balance lower, or, try to keep that paid down, just because of other factors. We're also looking at your debts. However, if you're on a limited time schedule, if you're looking to buy fast and you want an immediate boost, you can definitely give your credit card company a call. If you have a good history with them, they likely will, be willing to increase your limit. That's a pretty good way to immediately jump your score if that's what's keeping it down a little bit. Third is your credit history. So what that means is how long your credit lines have been open. So, the longer a credit line's been open, of course, the better. What you want to do if you're looking to buy a home, try not to open any new lines of credit, try not to open any new credit cards, not only for the debt, but also because that'll lower the average age of your credit history. At the same time, and I know this is something I've run into a few times with my buyers, sometimes if you have a pretty big balance and you've been working really hard to pay it off and you're super excited, maybe you were in debt and you're like so pumped that you got it all paid out down or off. Some people will immediately go to closing their credit cards, which, although I totally understand where people are coming from, you definitely don't want to do that. Keep those credit cards open. Do whatever else you have to do, cut it up, freeze it in your freezer. Do not close it because that will also reduce the average age of your credit history, and you want to make sure you have everything as old as possible. Generally, a good rule of thumb is that credit lines, if they're 3 years and older, that's generally where we see the best effect. Last but not least, got ahead of myself a little bit. Next is the mix of accounts. So what that means is basically, different types of credit. So credit cards, student loans, car payments. If you have a mortgage, the more variety you have, the more confident the credit bureaus will tend to be with you. So you definitely If you don't already have that as a factor, you only have a couple of credit cards, don't worry about it. Don't open anything. As I said, you want to make sure you keep your age of your credit good. So don't open anything new. But generally, as a rule of thumb, if you have a few years you're looking to buy down the road, I'd say a mix of about 3 to 5 credit cards is a pretty good standard to keep in mind. Last is inquiries. So what that means is if you're shopping for, home or a car, generally you'll get something called, well, there's 2 things. There's a hard pull, which is a mortgage lender and an auto lender. And there's a soft pull, which, typically a lot of utility companies, if you're opening up, a new electric account at a new apartment, that's what a utility company would do. A hard pull will have a hit on your credit. Good news about that is it's a very small hit, about 3 to 5 points. It's only on your credit score, your credit report for about a month. And also, great news is if you're shopping lenders or you're shopping auto, lenders, you have about 14 days from the first credit pull to shop as much as you want without additional penalty. So it'll only be that small hit. It'll be for a short amount of time. And as I mentioned, you can shop without fear that, you're going to keep getting dinged. So now that we've just discussed credit a little bit, let's move on to our next activity. So you want to look at your monthly survival number. Please take a look at your sheet that we were looking at, the monthly survival number. Fill out as much as you can to the best of your ability. Sum everything up, jot down as many things, sum it all up. Take a look. So the number you've calculated is the minimum amount of money that you are going to need to survive. That's what you would need to keep you afloat. God forbid you lose your job. You want to make sure you have that amount each month to cover your bills. And we want to look at this in relation to your income. So what a lender is going to do is a lender is going to look at your gross income, which is what your income is before the taxes are taken out. But as I'm sure you all know, the reality is we don't get that gross income in our paychecks every month or every week. We get the net income. So basically you want to be mindful when you're looking at how much, when you're looking at your monthly survival number and you're looking at your income, you're taking these 2 numbers and you're being realistic with yourself about, okay, what can you comfortably afford at the end of the day after you pay your bills? You want to be able to, live your life comfortably after you buy a home. You don't want to, max yourself out. We always joke, on my team that, your first year of buying your home is mac and cheese diet. Maybe you move up to the Salisbury steak diet on the second year. But generally, things are going to be a little bit tight, but we don't want to put you in a situation where you can't go out to eat once in a while, or you can't, buy new clothes, or, we want to put you in a position where you're not struggling, where it's as comfortable as we can make it. And having these 2 numbers on hand helps you realistically come up with where you want to be as opposed to where you at the max level that you could be. And we also spoke earlier about having a little bit of cushion of money after you close. So, that's in case of emergencies. So good rule of thumb is take this monthly survival number at the bottom. If you can, if it's realistic for you, try to have about 6 months of that, multiply that by 6, have that in your bank account after the down payment, after the closing costs, just in case of emergencies. If you have a little bit of time, but you're on a bit more of a tighter schedule, try to have at least 2 months. And as I mentioned previously, if that's not possible right now, try to at least aim for 2,000 to 3,000 in your bank account, just on top of everything else, just in case. You never know what could happen. Next up is the debt to income ratio, otherwise known as DTI. Thank you, Catherine. So this is what we look at when we're, determining what you can be pre-approved for, what your max qualification is going to be. So in this case, if you look at your sheet, we take the top 4 things. So if you already have a mortgage, we take a look at that payment. We do not look at rent, fortunately, but we would look at that, your auto payment, student loan payments, credit cards, all those fixed expenses. We take a look at that. We add those all up, and then we divide that by your gross monthly income. So for certain loan programs, your credit, you know, we can lend to you, we can qualify you up to a 56% total DTI. You know, it's definitely something we try to steer away from, because again, we want you to be comfortable, but you know, with certain compensating factors, we can go up that high. Ideally, you know, you want to look at this, you know, calculate it on your own, figure out what you qualify for and what you could possibly qualify for, just to see, you know, if that's going to be too much for you. A good lender will be able to walk you through this and go over these numbers with you, and you in particular, with your debts and your gross monthly income. But, you know, if you kind of want to take a look, just a curiosity just before you get to this stage, this is definitely what we look at for you. A good rule of thumb is you want to have your housing payment be 45% or less than your gross monthly income. And definitely the lower the DTI, the more flexibility you have in terms of financing. So definitely the lower that is, the better. Try to, you know, pay off things or keep balances as low as you possibly can. If you're searching for a home, definitely can't hurt and could only help. So if you could go on to the next slide, Catherine. This gives you a pretty good visual of what I was just discussing. So the orange section, that is what we were just talking about. That is all your fixed expenses, the top 4 things that you start on your sheet, plus your housing payment. So this 43% is a little bit inaccurate. As I mentioned, we can go up to 56% in certain situations. We try to keep that, you know, that's sort of a last resort. We try to keep it at a comfortable number. So we try to keep it around, you know, the max generally, I would say, is 50%, you know, depending on, you know, your credit, your debts. But ideally, for comfort level, we generally recommend 45% or less. So try to keep your numbers around that range. And then of course, the gray area, everything else, you want to make sure that gray area is nice and big, nice and comfortable for you. So, you know, you have money for your taxes, your savings, your groceries, your going out to eat once a month, whatever you want to do, you want to make sure you have some flexibility there as well. And if you could go on to the next slide. Catherine, awesome, thank you. So really at the end of the day, you know, if you're ready to take the next steps, whether it's down the road, whether it's coming up soon, just keep in mind that there's no one size fits all for any person, for any couple, for any single borrower. Everybody's different, everybody's needs and this place that they're at in their lives, they're all different. That's why we decided to name our workshop tonight the Recipe for Success, because we're hoping to help you come up with your best recipe, give you the tools to do so. So Catherine and I want to set you all up to succeed. We want to set you up to win in your home buying journey. So just keep in mind that it's never too early to sit down with her or I or whoever you're working with currently. We can help you answer any of your questions in more detail. Happy to go over particular strategies with you, get you to where you want to be, go over your wants, your needs, your goals, and yeah, get you in a home. This is the American dream. We're so excited to be here with you all tonight. We hope that everything we discussed gives you a great starting point, gives you something to think about, and definitely makes you more comfortable with what you need to be thinking of and preparing for by the time you get to the stage where you're in process of buying a home. And so thank you, everyone. Have any questions or any comments or anything you'd like me to go over in a little bit more detail?
If you have any questions, feel free to post them in the chat, or you can also use the raise hand feature, and then we can have you unmute and ask your question as well.
As we wait for any questions, I just want to reiterate, Lexi, big thank you for attending tonight. A big thank you also to the Junior League for asking us to come and give this workshop a second time. We always have a really good time doing it. So yeah, happy to answer anything about the real estate market, the process from a realtor's point of view, a lender's point of view. We'll stay on for the next few minutes to answer any questions, but we're good on time.
Yes, thank you everyone for attending tonight. And, you know, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. You have our phone numbers, our email,
Instagram, everything.
Instagram.
We live with our phones in our hands, so
Yep.
Any way you want to reach us.
Yes, exactly. If you see us in an event, flag us down.
Yeah.
Also, I'll send out the recording to everyone, just so you have it as well.
Excellent. And everyone has access to that Google Drive of resources that you can fill out on your own time. I will say sometimes, and I had forgotten to mention this, especially the buyer's questionnaire and the My Dream Home wish list, this kind of double spread, it's nice to have, if you have a partner or if you have relatives that are involved in your home purchase, print out a couple of different copies, have everyone fill out their own copy as to what their expectations are for the home. And then that becomes a really great starting point when you all come together to initiate the conversation of like, well, what did you say for, what towns we're looking in? And then you and your partner can have that conversation about like, well, I like these towns and, he or she might like those towns. And then you can kind of generate answers that have you guys landing on the same page. But it can be a helpful exercise to each kind of fill out these questionnaires on your own and then come together to have the conversation together.
Awesome.
Okay, I do have a question that just came in.
Great.
It says, in this busy home market, how many offers have your first-time buyers been submitting before they get an offer accepted?
That is so case dependent. It's hard to, it's a really tough question to answer. It is a robust market. It's, and difficulty of getting an offer accepted depends on so many different things, the areas that you're looking in, the price point that you're looking in, the type of home. So I have had, Lexi and I just had a client where she's actually a member of the Junior League. We got her pre-approval, 2 weeks ago? Her and I went out that weekend. We looked at 2 homes. The second one we loved. We put an offer in. It was accepted within less than 24 hours. And now we're on the way towards, Lexi working on her loan commitment, and us, we've already gone to purchase and sale, and our closing is in mid-April. And it was as easy as that. I have other clients who are looking outside of Boston in the Metro West area. I think we submitted our 6th offer this weekend and we didn't get it. So it's luck of the draw. Up until then, it had taken, I think on other clients, one offer didn't go in, but the second offer did. I have stories that demonstrate both ends of the spectrum. And I would say the best advice I can give you for trying to avoid this multiple offers and getting beaten out every time is listening to your real estate agent. We know what's going on in the market, and it can sound drastic what we're asking you to do in your offers. But in terms of what we're seeing that's getting accepted, we're giving you the best advice we can as to what the winning offer will be. And even then, at the end of the day, it might just not be enough. But I think when I start with clients now, I tell them, you may be pre-approved for X amount. We're going to look drastically under X so that you have a wide window of purchasing power that you can leverage to go, if it requires above asking. Because really to get an offer accepted in some of these tight markets, whether that's a tight market, meaning a town, or a tight price point that everyone's competing in, you have to be willing to do something that 15 to 20 other people are unwilling to do. And that's the offer that's going to win at the end of the day. It's a kind of a nothing answer to a really difficult question because it really depends. But it's definitely challenging to be a buyer right now, but it's something that we're seeing offers that do get accepted. And my philosophy is like, you can't win if you don't try. And as long as you're being smart about it, it's a worthwhile effort, because when you get it accepted, there's nothing better than that feeling.
I have a question that just came in that kind of goes into that a little bit. It's more specifically about VA loans. I was asked, are there homes/sellers in Boston that won't accept the VA loan? Catherine, you could probably talk a little bit more about that. I know from my experience, and you could probably expand on this a little bit, VA loan is an incredible product if you qualify for it. I mean, I would suggest it all day long to any veteran, hands down. I do know, and I don't know if things have changed a little bit, but sometimes listing agents get a little bit wary of them because they more so, I would say, I'm not speaking poorly of anyone, but more so out of ignorance. Mm-hmm. They feel that there's more tests or more hoops that they have to jump through, that it might cost more money for the seller or more hassle. Unfortunately, that's, a really common misconception. VA loans are just as easy as any other loans to get through, but I have seen some, and again, Catherine, you can speak more about this. I have seen some ignorance about them, more so in the general populace. We don't have a lot of we don't have as many veterans around here as other places in the country, so they don't see them as often.
Yeah, Alexi, I think you hit the nail on the head there. It's a great product. That being said, the reality of the situation is not many listing agents know what to do with it or know enough about it. So oftentimes, and whether this is right or wrong, is here nor there, this is just what happens, those VA loans go straight to the bottom of the pile because there's just a lack of understanding, and they would rather go with the devil they know than the devil they don't. So they're just not as common, and therefore there's not a lot of agents that understand what they are. So the agents then can't advise their seller as to kind of what to do with it. So it kind of gets pushed to the side. That's not every case, but I think speaking generally, it's reminiscent of Lexi's answer as well. A wonderful product. Unfortunately, there's just not a lot of understanding around it. So take that kind of as you will. I see in the chat a question about, Lexi, could you speak a little bit about FHA loans?
Absolutely. So FHA loans are great. I mean, there is some misconception, certain people hear that. One thing that's unique about FHA loans is that they have a higher private mortgage insurance. The private mortgage insurance, that's a fee that the lender charges monthly. Sometimes you can pay a big chunk up front, but it basically protects the lender in the event of a potential foreclosure, or if anything were to go wrong, you forfeit your mortgage. It protects the lender. In most cases with conventional financing, you only have to pay that private mortgage insurance up to when you have about 78 to 80% equity to the value of your home. If you put 20% down, that you never have to pay private mortgage insurance. If you put less down and that just happens, it'll, your value goes up, or you just pay your mortgage down, it'll fall off automatically and you don't have to do anything further. So for FHA loans, that is something that, some people have a misconception on, that the private mortgage insurance never falls off. So that, gives it the bad name, I guess. But it is an excellent program. It allows a lender to qualify a borrower with not a lot down. You could do 3.5% down with even a multifamily, which generally there's higher down payment requirements. FHA loans can allow us to approve a buyer with a lower score. So as I mentioned, you can have a score as low as 580. with other compensating factors, of course. Also, it allows us to look at if you have a high DTI, like if there's something going on, you know, you have some debts and you just want a home, it gives us that flexibility to, you know, put you in a home with a little bit higher of a debt to income ratio. So it is a great program, you know, allows us to give you lower rates in certain cases, gives us more flexibility on that. So I wouldn't say there's too many more overlays. One thing to keep in mind if you're shopping for a home and you do qualify only FHA, Catherine would be able to speak to you more on in the process, but there are things to keep in mind, certain restrictions when you're searching for homes, such like, for instance, one weird one is that you can't have peeling paint on the home. Also, it's not great for condos. You would need to have the condo approved, but generally, yeah, it's a great program. I mean, for the right borrower, for the right situation, I definitely suggest it and don't see any problems with it. Also, I got a private question. Somebody asked, they were told by their lender that they needed 12 months of mortgage payments in an escrow account in addition to 20% down payment and closing costs. To me, you know, without looking at your individual situation, that sounds like you might have been qualifying for a jumbo loan. That fits what you're telling me. You do need, so tripping over my words. For conventional financing, a lender can give you a loan up to $770,000. And then whatever you pay over that is the purchase price you could get. A jumbo loan allows you to buy at a higher amount than that. So, you know, theoretically, if you're looking for, you know, a $2.5 million home, you would need a jumbo loan. In that case, you would definitely need 20% down, and you would need the 12 months of reserves, depending on. And there's a few other things they would need to look at, depending on what your finances look like. You know, the guidelines tend to be a lot more strict. There tends to be higher interest rates. It has nothing to do with how strong you are as a buyer. It just really is all about what's risky to the lender. So that's why they have all those extra overlays for those.
Lexi, I have a question as well that just came in. This was asked anonymously. In my personal opinion, or I guess in your personal opinion, towards me though, could I have made that any more awkward? In your personal opinion, will the housing market drop again post 2020? Or are housing prices here to stay due to housing shortages? This is where I would love it if I had a crystal ball to be able to thoroughly answer this question. We, of course, cannot know what the housing market is going to do in the future. I think one example of that is, of course, we knew over the course of 2020, interest rates were going to go up. However, no one could have foresaw crises overseas leading to such a drastic and sudden rate hike over the past couple of weeks. Like, we just couldn't have known. So I will say that I can't know for certain, of course, but I wouldn't bank on the fact that the housing market is going to drop drastically after 2022. I think the market that we're in is here to stay for at least the next year, perhaps 2 years, with increasing interest rates over the next several months. We will see perhaps a leveling out of the market. As interest rates go up, typically home prices come down. So there's leveling in that regard. However, I think in this question, the individual obviously is very knowledgeable about what's happening. The housing shortage that we're dealing with right now, just the strong buyer demand is not being met with a housing supply. We are seeing incredibly low inventory, both from home resales, so sellers selling the homes that they're living in, and also very low inventory coming from new construction. And we're just not seeing the inventory meet the level of demand. More buyers. I mean, Lexi and I get new buyers every day. So I would say, you know, it perhaps will level, but we won't see drastic changes. Lexi, do you have a question that has come in? Because I have another one, if not.
Nope, No, go ahead.
Okay. The question is, what are some up and coming Boston neighborhoods potential buyers should keep an eye on? Let's see, up and coming neighborhoods. I toured East Boston with some buyers the other day that has a lot of new construction over there and a lot of turnover. I think, where else? Boston neighborhoods. Southie, of course, continues to be under construction. Let's see. Those are the two areas that come to top of mind as older homes are being sold off, these generational family homes bought by developers and are being turned into new construction condos. Those would probably be two that come to the top of my mind. Lexi, do you have buyers looking anywhere that's up and coming in Boston?
You know, I've been seeing a lot of interesting stuff happening in Revere, which is completely unexpected. Yeah. I know that's not exactly Boston. It's a little bit more
they're
neck of the woods.
Sure. Yeah, Revere, maybe Dorchester.
Yeah.
Those you get kind of like the surrounding Boston neighborhoods. Absolutely.
Right. There's some interesting stuff happening in those neighborhoods for sure. I mean, and again, who can predict what's going to happen? I mean, I think going back to the previous question, if you're waiting to buy until house prices drop, I would not suggest that.
No, yes.
Yeah. Because we have had some buyers, unfortunately, who, you know, maybe in 2020 were like, oh, things are skyrocketing and we're just going to wait and we're going to hold off. In the same homes that they were looking at are now 100,000, 200,000 more expensive than they were looking at. You know, house prices are, you know, house values are appreciating at such a huge rate. I mean, what, like 15% year to year appreciation. I mean, even if you're overbuying, a lot of people are really wary of that. They're worried that they're going to overbuy. I mean, you really can't go wrong. You have immediate equity like the second you close on a home. I mean, I see it all the time, even sometimes a month later.
Yeah. I will also say, not only, I heard this from a real estate agent last night that he had a buyer that got so discouraged last year, waited, you know, stopped their home search and said, we'll come back next year when it's better. And it's come back this year and is so surprised that it's no better. It's, I don't want to use the word worse, but, you know, homes are more expensive now. And I will say that, and Lexi, you can kind of corroborate this, but with rising interest rates too, you're able to afford less home the higher your interest rate is. So someone who could afford a $300,000 house at a 2.5 interest rate in 2020 can now only afford a $265,845 home in 2020 with a 3.375 interest rate. So the buyer has lost about, you know, 34,000 and change of purchasing power with interest rate hikes. So I think all that goes to say it is a seller's market. So it's a tough time to be a buyer. So there won't be like a good time to enter this market. But if buying something that you need to do in order to increase the size of your space because of a relocation, whether that's job or otherwise, life goes on and you know, it's just a reality. Now's the time you need to buy. Okay, fine. So let's do whatever we can to make it as positive and as smooth of an experience as possible and to get you in the home that you really love for hopefully, you know, a price and for terms that over time allow you to build equity and have some return on your investment when you're ready to sell 10 to 30 years from now.
Absolutely. And two things just going off of what Catherine said. If you are already pre-approved, definitely check with your lender. Make sure that you still qualify for the amount you're pre-approved for. You know, especially if it's been a while since you've spoken to your lender, if you're pre-approved, you want to make sure that, you know, rates have increased about 2 points since December. So, I mean, that's a huge difference. You want to make sure that not only do you qualify, but that you're still comfortable with the payment that you would be at with that new interest rate. And second of all, you know, going back to what we were discussing about buying now as opposed to later, you know, even if you overbuy now, and house prices do drop eventually, you know, the amazing thing about real estate is that it always goes back up, and it always goes back up with a vengeance. So even if you know, my dad has a really funny story. You know, my family's been doing this for a very long time. You know, he remembers as a little boy sitting on his grandfather's lap, and his grandfather pointed across the street at a 2-family and said, "Oh, you see that house? They bought it for $7,000." And my dad was like, "Wow, you know, that's so crazy. I can't believe they spent so much money." That same house is worth $700,000 now, and possibly more. So it just goes to show you that, you know, you could buy a house now for $1 million. Down the road, if you hold on to it, it could be worth $3 million in a couple of years. So, I mean, those are some crazy numbers for certain people, but, you know, in Boston, you know, things are only going to go up.
And that last point is so important. If you're a buyer looking in the Boston or greater Boston area, I loved this phrase from a well-seasoned agent in my office: always bet on Boston. Jobs are not going anywhere. It's, you know, the hub of, you've got the international airport. I mean, you know, home prices, if they do go down, will only stand to go up over the long term, because Boston's not going anywhere.
I love that saying. Always bet on Boston.
Always bet on Boston. Yeah. Title town, baby.
Yeah. Love it. Yeah.
Anything else coming through, Shannon?
Yeah, I don't see anything on my end.
That's all I have on my end as well.
Excellent. Well, we ended early, which is better than the in-person event. We went a little long there. Lexi and I really love doing this stuff. Our contact information is on the screen. So if you're interested in getting in touch, whether, you know, you're years away from a purchase and just have a couple of questions, or you're looking to buy tomorrow and, you know, need to get out and looking, we're happy to have a conversation. That being said, if you know any friends or family that are looking in the Boston area, happy to chat with them as well. We are all about education, just happy to be a resource for you and your loved ones. So we'll give you 10 minutes back tonight, hoping to see you all at upcoming social events in the future. And, you know, we'll do this again next year. Right, Lex?
Right. We'll be here.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Catherine and Lexi. This was great.
Thank you, everyone. We appreciate you attending.
Bye, guys.
Have a great night, everyone.
Bye.